Well, hello, everybody. Welcome again to the podcast, One Stud at a Time. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing and chatting it up with Megan Potts over here. And as I say when I call her, what up, Potts? You know?
What up?
What up, what up? So a little bit about Megan here. You know, Megan grew up in Sparks, Nevada, and I've never heard about Sparks, Nevada until today.
It's really close to Reno.
Right? But again, I've never heard of it. So I'm like, oh, Sparks, Nevada. All I know is Vegas, Henderson, Summerlin, and Reno. Now I could add a fifth one to it.
You know Tahoe too, I'm sure.
Oh,
Tahoe's in Nevada.
Tahoe is in Nevada.
There's areas of Tahoe in Nevada.
Yeah, exactly. So you moved to California when you were 18 for school. What school did you go to?
I went to a school out in the middle of Bakersfield, or close to Bakersfield in Taft, California. Do you know where Taft is?
I know where Taft is.
Oh, wow.
I built close to Taft. Yeah, basically in the boonies of Central Cali.
Yep, didn't know that when I moved there, but that's right.
Yep. And then you love the outdoors. For people who don't know, Megan is a huge outdoor person, enjoys hiking, adventuring out with her wiener dog. So you could ask her about her wiener at any time. You know, the dog is cute. She trains in, I will not say it because I'm going to get tongue twisted. What is it?
I train Capoeira Angola with Angoleiros do Sertão.
So what is that?
It's a martial art. It's an Afro-Brazilian martial art.
But I mean, there's more to the martial art. Isn't there like music to it?
Yeah, there's a music aspect. So all games are played to live music. It's really cool. And it's also really unique. So the first time people see it, they often go, what is that?
Is this like Brazilian Tai Chi?
I mean, I guess you could kind of equate it to that.
No offense to anybody out there. I've seen it and I was like, oh, this is like kind of similar, but a little different, right? So I mean, yeah, I wasn't gonna say that whole phrase. And you've been studying Portuguese for a year. How's that going?
It's going okay.
Yeah,
I understand a lot more than I speak, so don't.
I won't put you on the spot today, Megan, but
thanks.
maybe next time she's on, I'll put her on and say, all right, let's have a conversation. Me in Espanol, tú in Portuguese, you know?
Well, you won't understand anything I'm saying.
It's okay. We'll just have a conversation somehow. One way or another, we'll understand each other.
I might understand you. I understand a lot of Spanish.
And your dreams are visiting, what are you trying to visit next year? Is Brazil?
Brazil.
Is it this year or next year?
In January of 2025.
January of 2025. So guys, when you book a cooking session with Megan, you can help her achieve her dream to go to Brazil.
Yep.
We'll talk about that later. And then on her spiritual side, it consists of yoga, meditation, and even host monthly sound baths. Now, guys, people don't know this about me that much, but I'm a big spiritual guy, right? When it comes to things like that, I started doing ice baths, meditation, breath work, even yoga. I started doing Pilates back in the day, you know. I did one session and I had cramps on my abs for about 3 days. That's a whole different story. But you know, Megan, like, let's talk about that spiritual side. I know there's been a lot of personal development and there's been quite a bit of work that's been done, right? So for people who don't know, Megan and I were in NLP together. We studied it. Unknowingly, we both went into another program where it talks more on the spiritual side of our personal development side. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. And, you know, what is it that you truly found about yourself when you approach the spiritual side of your personal development?
So, especially with the spiritual stuff, a lot of it was just remembering. So, like, remembering how I grew up. So, I grew up hunting, fishing, outdoors, camping, like, all the things that...
Hold on, really quick. Guys, did you hear that? This woman hunts? What else did you say?
Fish, camp, hike.
Just saying, guys. Just saying. I have Megan Potts. Go on, Megan.
Yeah, I kind of do it all. And so a lot of my spiritual journey, I started studying like shamanism, right? And a lot of it was just earth-based traditions that I kind of was taught growing up, like inadvertently. My grandma was very much an influence of that because as like the rest of my family was out camping when I was really little, my grandma would play with us in like the bushes, like literally out in the middle of the desert. I grew up in a lot of like the mountain area of like Nevada because that's just where my family hunted. So
Right.
remembering a lot of that, remembering how just like that connection to earth is how like my spirituality started. Like it was just that remembrance of like the innocence of childhood.
Right.
Hmm.
So I know we had a conversation once about you going, I think it was up to Mount Baldy, just to like get away, reground, and just I mean like clear the mind, right?
Hmm.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? Of like how often do you do it? What do you feel? Like just give the audience who doesn't know about this, right? Like just give them a snippet of what it feels like,
Do you want some of the science or some of the spiritual,
Well,
actual spiritual stuff
I
of
mean,
it?
I mean, just go with both of them, right?
Hmm.
Because I know there's a lot that goes into. I mean,
Hmm.
you know, and for me, the way I recharge myself sometimes is just taking my shoes off and just standing on the grass,
Hmm.
right? That's the simple, the
Hmm.
quick, easy, the band-aid fix, right?
Hmm.
But there's moments where, people don't know. There's a spot in LA that I go to, and it's just where I can go clear my mind,
Hmm.
release some of that stress, right? And it's just, I think people forget that sometimes you have to reground yourself.
Hmm. And that's literally a thing, right? Grounding is a thing. It's an energetic practice too, where like, the earth has its own energy force, right? Its own frequency too.
Hmm.
That when we step onto earth barefoot, like it really does ground us and it releases a lot of those tensions that our bodies hold on to.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I would love to do more grounding myself on a regular basis. And I need to schedule that in my schedule more so that I can actually do that on a regular basis. But when I really need it, I go find water,
Right.
right? Wherever that is natural, right?
Hmm.
Whether that is going to the ocean or finding a stream or whatever it is, right? I didn't grow up in this area. So like I've only found like certain little spots that I like go and know and have like really developed relationships for myself with in these
Right.
areas because these areas, just like humans, like have characteristics, right? They've got their own natural ways of being, right? Through the seasons, through everything. Tahoe is definitely one of the places that I always will say is my favorite place on earth because every time I go visit family, I always try to make it up to Tahoe at least for a couple hours just to
Right.
go visit the water. I don't care if it's winter time. I will like get in the water at some level, whether that's just my feet or I will like I've swam in the winter there before because it's so good for you. Like it's so good for your body.
It is. And I'll share an experience that I had once. So I was told, hey, you're so stressed out. You're so like you have so much going on. Like you need to like purify yourself. And I was like, okay, like what does that mean, right? And so I call her my aunt. I call her like my spiritual guide, right? When it comes to certain things. And so she tells me one day, we're all white the whole day, and then you're gonna go to the ocean on a full moon in the middle of the night, and you're gonna go jump in the ocean.
Sounds like I'd like her.
And I was like, dude, this lady's crazy. Like, what the hell, right?
Not at all.
And so I was like, you know what? Nothing to lose, everything to gain, right? So I was like, all right. So I had these white shorts on all day. I had my white shirt on all day. And so it comes. This is in December of, I think, 2 years ago. And it was cold that day. And she calls me. She goes, oh, by the way, it has to be done on this day. So you can just, really release anything that you're holding on to. Keep in mind, I didn't know what she meant by that.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am, and I'm like, okay, now I gotta go to the ocean. So now I head out to San Clemente because like this is like my ocean I enjoy just chilling at.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, so I just jump in, right? And so I was like, oh, the waves are nice and calm. It's perfect. I started walking closer and closer to a shoreline, and you would have swore like the ocean was told like rough them up, right? And I was like looking at how big these waves were getting, and I'm like, it's midnight, it's dark. What am I doing? And so I go into the ocean. I go into like knee deep, and out of nowhere, like the swell just like pulled me in, spun me, or it like knocked me down. I spin around in the ocean, and somehow my shorts were taken away from me. My shirt was taken away from me, and my water shoes were taken away from
You
me.
got humbled.
I was like, whoa, what the hell was this, right? And so I was like, okay. And so my cousin was with me, and she's like, good thing we brought a towel. And I was like, yeah, but it was freezing cold. But the moment I came out of the ocean just stopped. It was still, the waves were calm. I was like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started really like focusing in on the spiritual side of it. And actually, it was more than 2 years ago. It was actually like 4 years ago now I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I know how deep that goes, right?
I had a friend one time that I took her to the ocean, and I told her, yeah, I'm gonna sing to the ocean. And the moment I started the song that I was using to communicate with the ocean, same thing. Waves started going. She looked at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just communicating to the ocean, right? Because it's energetic too, right? So, the ocean knows.
The ocean knows.
The ocean
That's why
knows.
you don't mess with the ocean. You don't mess with the ocean. Mother Nature is a force to be reckoned with and to be
Absolutely.
respected.
Absolutely.
100%. And so, that was like kind of my start of my journey, right? Of personal development, the spiritual development, everything like that. So, and as we put it in our world, right? Because we speak the same language. And for those who don't know, I don't use failure as the word. I use lessons. So what was like the biggest, like the hardest lesson you've ever had to learn?
In regards to what?
Any experience? I mean, when I'm talking about the hardest lesson, what's that hardest lesson you've ever had to encounter?
The hardest lesson is probably knowing when to walk away. Like, ooh, yeah, that's definitely, and that's still a lesson I'm learning, right?
Mhm.
When to walk away from things that no longer serve.
us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and what have you learned from that though? Because I know, that as we say in our world, right? Until we've learned our lesson, it stops hitting us in the face,
Mm-hmm.
right? And after that, it will reappear to see if we have learned it.
Absolutely.
Right? And we call those what, light bears, I think is what we call them on the spiritual side.
There's so many terms for it.
Yeah.
So many terms.
Shadows, triggers.
What have I learned from that, right? I've learned to listen to my intuition better, learn to listen to like just that instinct of like, oh yeah, I know this isn't good. And rather than ignoring it and be like, well, but maybe, to really listen to it, right? Because otherwise that lesson hits harder, right?
Yeah.
It comes through in a stronger way because, if you haven't learned it, haven't really integrated it truly, like it's going to show up again.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Like there is no good or bad in that. It's just what is.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, learning to listen to myself better and trust that.
Right. And I know because even today, right, I deal with these lessons, right? And
yeah, me too.
every time these lessons pop up, it's a different form though.
Slightly.
Right? Slightly. It's like when you're taking a test and they give you the same question but worded differently. Like that's how I feel I get tested sometimes, right? And I'm like, man, like, and some of my stuff is like patience, right? Like, and patience comes up in different ways, right? And I'm like, oh, like I have now, I've had patience with my family. I have patience with colleagues. I have patience with friends. But every so often that patience shows up and I'm like I just got to sit back, right? Take it in a little bit. And I'm like, okay, what am I missing? Right? And why am I still getting triggered behind it?
I've been taught to transform patience to acceptance.
Patience to accept. Well, yeah.
Right?
I can attest to that one.
Because if you're like, in those situations and you're like praying for patience,
Yeah.
you're going to get shown opportunities to exude patience.
You were going to just
Right?
use my quote.
What?
Because I always say, when people actually, like, so people will ask, hey, give me patience, right? Or the big one, give me courage to do something, just give me courage, right? And I tell people, well, God's sending you the situation so that you can show
step
that
into
you're
your
courageous.
courage.
Exactly. And so I'm always like, give me goosebumps if you can see through my coat right now. But it's like, it's interesting, right? So it's not always asking for it directly. It's like, hey, this is your moment to step up, right? And so that's kind of one of my things is like, I had to learn patience with my dad, right? I had to learn patience with my mom. They had different languages. I had to learn their language. I had to learn, right? And now it's now turned into acceptance because now I know how to communicate with my dad. I know how to communicate with my mom. I know how to communicate with my siblings, right? I know how to communicate with clients. I know how to communicate with, colleagues. And so, again, like you said, it's the acceptance part. And it's how do we say it in our world? It's, we got to love the person for who they are because they've only have the tools that they've been given.
Yeah, they're doing the best they can with what they have.
Exactly. And so, and that was one of my acceptances, right? And it's very profound, really. And I tell my siblings, like, you got to love your parents for who they are. I love my mom, right? Like, I love I would drop, if my mom were to call me right now, I'd be like, stop the podcast, hold on. Like, let me see what's up with mama wants, right? Like, just like that. Right? Mom, do not call me, please. but you know what I mean, though, right?
Put that out there.
Let me not put that out there because I'm watching. But, it's just beautiful when you actually accept it, right? And I think for from our conversations and knowing when to walk away, it's kind of like sometimes a hard kick in the ass, right?
Very much so.
And to the point that you're like, oh, and I can attest to it too. Like I'm like, oh, okay, today I flipped out. Why did I flip out for it? Like I shouldn't have flipped out for it. And then I just sit back and reflect upon it. But
yeah, and I'm still learning like to not hold on to frustrations afterwards about it. Like to be able to fully let things go and be like, it's just what it was. Right?
Yeah.
It's where people are at, where I'm at, right? It's the lessons that I need to learn. I always believe everything happens for the right reason, at the right time, with the right people. Like,
yeah,
it's how things go, right?
Yeah.
It just is. And yeah.
Yeah, I know because it's interesting enough because when we're taking these classes together, I know how you and I connected on some of these things. And I mean, we went pretty profound on our self-development side of it. And
the
so
transformations that happen.
the transformations, right? And sometimes we don't realize that without going through this work that we do. It's what's been holding us back so long, right? People think, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with, my performance in my business, right? And it's like,
Has everything to do with it, right?
as we say.
What you do, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Exactly.
100% believe that, right? Because I see it reflected over and over and over, not only in myself, but in like other people.
Yeah.
Right. And even if they have no awareness of that, I can see the reflection in that and that and that.
Yeah.
And it's like, we do. And that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's just that learning process, learning to learn yourself from the inside out.
Right.
Right.
And I think the hardest thing, well, for me, and I don't know for you, when we're doing all this work, was loving ourselves for who we are, right? And I think we as society, we forget that because social media is so influential on our perspective of life that we forget who we are inside, and we forget that. We forget our inner child, right? And we forget how to love ourselves and to love ourselves to get, how can I say, we love ourselves for the person we were before because that's who got us here today.
Yes. Finding that acceptance and that love and the experiences that we've had, good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. And it exactly created that foundation to where you're at.
Yeah.
Right?
And so, I mean, talking about that, like what was the hardest part about loving yourself again? Because I was on that journey with you. So I know it was difficult, right?
I mean, even uncovering those hidden deep thoughts that you don't want to acknowledge that are there.
Yeah.
Right? Like those are the hard ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get you. And so it's, but once you unraveled the twine, I guess you could say, right? Like, what was that feeling after?
It's emptiness in the best way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because otherwise, like if you're not willing to dig deep, right, and go through the mud, the rocks, the dirt, the debris, like everything, you're not going to get to the bottom of something.
Yeah.
Right? And so getting to the bottom of it, really uncovering what was there that I wasn't even consciously aware of was huge. And it was this like, oh, there's nothing there now, which is a place of creation, right? It's a place to be able to like now bloom freshly, right?
Right.
Create the soil, create that growth of what I do want to create, rather than living from those unconscious thoughts, those unconscious patterns, those like limiting beliefs that we're holding back, right? And there's probably always still layers, no matter how deep you go, and that's okay. And it's always an evolving process of like what's to come and how to create what's next, right? Like that's really what I've loved through like all the personal development stuff is like really getting to learn who I am and how I drive myself, right? And what drives me, what's actually important to me and what's showing up, and understanding how to communicate to that and understand that and work with that in the ways that I want to flourish, right? In ways that I want to create. And there's always a learning process, right? Sometimes it's not from 1 minute to the next you've integrated things. Sometimes it is. And sometimes it's like, oh, you look back 6 months and you go, oh, I'm doing that thing now that I said I wanted to do 6 months ago.
Right.
Oh, cool. Right?
Yeah.
Like I was looking at it with just some of like my own personal goals. I have a whiteboard at home that I have goals from, I think it's February of 2022 that I haven't wiped away and written off. And I looked at it the other day, just happened to notice it. It was like, oh, look at that. I'm doing that, check, doing that, check. Like, and those were like things that I thought were really far out at the time on these boards.
Right.
And it was just like, just daily activity kind of things. Like, this is what I want to integrate into my daily life.
Right.
So it was really cool to look at that. And I didn't even realize that I had been like doing all the things on my list until I saw that board. It's like, oh, no wonder I hadn't cleared it away yet. Like that was one of those like, oh, like ways to acknowledge ourselves too for the growth and the change and the development that we go through.
And you said like, once you processed everything, there was like that emptiness inside, right? But the emptiness allowed you to prosper and grow from it, right? But I know we talk about like the weight off one's shoulders, right? How did that weight feel like once it was like, once you actually like released it? Once you released all that negativity, all that bullshit, I guess. All the bullshit.
I knew that's where you're going. It was such a lightness of transformation, right? So like the best analogy I can give of that is like if you're thinking about a bucket of dirty water, right? Isn't it easier to dump out the bucket of water and fill it up with clean water than try to just run clean water through it to get that water clean? It's a much faster process. And that's what it was. It's like emptying to be able to be refilled in the things that I want. So it was this lightning, like this ease. Much more ease, I should say.
I mean, because I know when I did my breakthrough, I think my breakthrough took about 8 hours to do. Yours was a little longer, wasn't it, than that?
The first one was, I think, 14.
Yeah.
That process, yeah. Then I think the second one was 12 or 13.
And I like how you said, like, we're like layers. We're like an onion, right? And I think Shrek says it best. Ogres have layers. And I like to say, like, we're ogres inside, right? Like, and we're just peeling away at our layers constantly. Have that fresh meat, right? And once we do address certain things, things start to pop up. And when your body's ready to address it, it's ready to address it. And so, that being said, how did you find yourself again, though, after all that? Because let me just put this into perspective. When I had my breakthrough, I was like lost for like days, maybe weeks, right? And I was like, man, who the am I, right? Like who's Adrian Avila again, right? Who is he? And it took me a while to actually like find myself again. But I looked back at like Elon Musk said, we stopped dreaming, we stopped believing in ourselves. And so again, I started to dream again, and like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. This is how the podcast started. It was all a dream, right? And then here we go. Meet the right team to do this stuff with, right? Bring the right people to be part of it. And so it took me a while to find myself again.
Same.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it too was like going through values, right? What's actually important. What's actually important. Not what we perceive to be important. What's actually important. Like I looked at that, like what was important to me. What do I want to create? How do I want to live? What do I want to do? And like live from that space, because I'd much rather live a life every day that I love than one I dread waking up to.
Right.
Right? And I've gone through phases, right? Gone through moments of like, and had to go back and go, okay, let's put my tools into play and go, okay, what's going on? Why am I waking up this way? Why am I not waking up inspired to do things, right? Because that's like the way I want to live. It's like I would love to live every single day inspired and like joyous and just fun, right? Because like that's where I want to be, right?
Exactly.
So taking a look at that and like listening to things and not being tied to them.
Yeah.
Being like, this is what it is right now. And how do I do that? How do I explore that? And going, okay, does this work? Does this really align? No. Okay, let's walk away from it. And if it does, cool. Like, how do we integrate that for a daily to make that part of like the daily joy?
Yeah. I'm with you, girl. I am with you 100%. What's the biggest risk that you ever taken in your life, though?
Moving to California. And I didn't even know it at the time, which was the most beautiful thing.
Let's get into it.
So I never expected to leave Nevada. Never, ever expected to leave Nevada.
You never expected to leave, what is it called, Sparks?
Yeah. Yeah, because all my family was there. I didn't have family down here. Like, I came down here for school. No, I really came down because I wanted to play softball, and my boyfriend at the time was in the area, kind of. Like, he was a couple hours away here in LA area. And, like, it was, like, 3 months before semester started of my freshman year in college that I was like, all right, I'm out. And I didn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
And realized when I got here, oh, man, Taft is small. And I didn't know, like, didn't have any idea. And, like, it changed everything.
Yeah.
Like, obviously changed everything. And those first few years were really tough. They were really challenging because I just didn't know, right? I just didn't know anything.
Right.
And, like, I learned lots of lessons. Lots of things that I had to then...
What was the hardest lesson you learned from that?
To stand for myself. Right? And what I know to be truth. Right? Because the situation that I ended up in, because after I decided to stop going to that school I was going to, just because of education things, they wouldn't let me do classes I wanted to take because of whatever regulations there were.
Yeah.
I moved in with that boyfriend at the time and his family, and it was just not a great situation. It was just not a great situation, and learning to empower myself around that.
Yeah.
Right? Really empower myself. And I'm so glad that just within a couple months after I moved down into Covina, I found what I do now, right? And it was one of those things that I was like, I don't know what this is. I think it's good. Let's try it out.
This is the cooking system, right? So, guys, how ironic is this? Her last name is Potts. And I give her so much shit because I call her cooking system Potts. Because, I mean, there's a pot in there, right? But, you know, I just find it ironic, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you went into selling these. I have a set of these cooking systems. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
all bullshit aside, you can tell the difference in the quality, right? But that journey from being at Taft and coming to Covina, that's what transformed you into doing what you do now.
Yeah, and I was so nervous when I first started. I was not a people person. I didn't want to talk to people, period. Like, I used to hold my little book that I use for my presentations, my demos, in front of my face, and it sounded like I was gonna cry. Like, literally. And I had a dinner one day where we were having a good time, and the husband of the family was like, "Are you okay? Are you gonna cry? Don't cry on me. I don't do that." And I was like, "I'm fine. I'm okay. Like, I am nervous, but I'm okay." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Why are you nervous? You seem to know all your information. You're going out, you're helping people, and you've got one of the greatest products I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Why are you nervous about that?"
Yeah.
And it was one of those like light bulb moments of like, you're right. Like, I'm not nervous about that. Like, I'm here to help people, right?
That's awesome.
Because that's why I started. It was for my family too. I really wanted to share the health benefits with my family and myself and everybody, because I knew it would make a huge difference, and it has. And like, I tell people that I used to be shy now,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Okay, sure." I'm like, no, really, I was.
Guys, before we started this recording, she was letting out all the giggles before. As you can see right now, she's still. But you know what, Megan? I've seen you grow. I've seen the progress. I've seen the transformations and everything. It's freaking awesome to see that. But one thing I do have to ask. So McKinley here helps children under the age of 18. What would you tell your 14-year-old self if you were able to see her again? What would you tell
I'm like,
her?
14-year-old
From
self,
what you
what age
learned-
is that? Like, what grade is that?
What age is that? 14.
I know. What grade is that?
That grade is, I think, 8th grade to maybe 8th to 9th.
Oh, man.
Like, what would you tell that kid if you were able to, if you're able to share what you know now, share it with her?
I would tell her people's perceptions have nothing to do with you, right? It has everything to do with them. Keep doing what you do and show up the way you show up. You're amazing. You're brilliant. You're smart. You're awesome. And take everything that you can do, right? Do everything you can do that you want to do.
I love it. That is just beautiful. Man, kind of took it away from me a little bit right there. But it's awesome because sometimes we do get lost. We lose our identity at that age.
Yeah.
And we try to become someone we're not. And so we start living a life with a mask on us, and we lose ourselves in that process.
Yeah, we like want to fit in. We want to like be adored by our peers. Like, I know I did, and there were so many things that like I started doing to myself that wasn't really me.
Yep.
Right? Really who I wanted to be.
Yep.
So
That's awesome. And then you took a tour of McKinley, which is pretty cool, right? You get to driving this golf cart around campus. Can you just share just some feedback on what you liked about it, what you learned about it? You can just give the audience an idea of what it is on your perspective.
Well, I love how open the campus is, and how green everything is. It's beautiful. The fact that you guys have a garden and that stuff that speaks to me, right? The cooking me too. I'm like, ooh, fresh food. I like have people in mind of like, oh, I want to share this with them, right? So that they can make a difference too. Because I know like one of my missions is changing the next generation, right? Through health and through cooking and through the way that we eat, right?
Same here, but not the cooking part, That's my stuff. But
yeah, and so I think it's so cool all the things that's happening here.
Yeah.
Like it's really making a difference, and I can see that.
That's awesome.
And I want to be just in loops that I know, right? So I know I can share and
I mean these kids could use something like that. I know that, and so I'm excited to see what you bring to McKinley, and how we can just change their perspective of life, especially for what they've gone through. So, again, you guys, I appreciate you guys tuning into this. We have Megan. If you guys want to reach out to her, she does cooking demos. So you can follow her on Instagram. What's your Instagram for it?
Core Cooking M Potts.
M Potts. Right. Yep. And so reach out to her. Her links will be down in the description area. I'm telling you, it's not a bullshit system. It is a great system. I love cooking with it. We use it all the time at home. I got a heat pan skillet, so it's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Again, you guys, thank you for tuning in to the One Stud at a Time podcast, where I tell yourselves, love yourself for who you are. Love yourself on how you got here today. And you'll always remember that. Love is in the air, babies. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.